Humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sangran, Guru Piranyo, fellow Jnanis. Today I'm going to continue the lecture on Katha Upanisha. We're going to cover boon 2, which is a very important boon. Last week we covered boon 1, which is about sacrifice, how this young boy by the name of Nachiketa comes in front of Lord Yama, the Lord of Death, and he's been given 3 boons because of his quality of his mind and discipline, patience, and perseverance. He's given 3 boons. And we spoke about boon 1. Normally, when you come in front of the Lord, if you are given a boon, most people will probably ask for something material, either good health, good job, a lot of financial security, and so on. But this boy didn't ask for that. So his first boon was that he wanted, his father, who was going through various sufferings and challenges and ignorance, to be liberated. You see, so in a sense that he was not asking for himself, but he was asking for someone else, for their happiness and peace, and so this is one of the qualities that you see, that people who are in that spiritual path would not ask things for themselves, but actually ask for the well-being and welfare of others. So this is what we saw. So Lord Yama was quite surprised, and he said, okay, ask your next boon. So he said, done, no problem. Your father will be liberated, he'll be happy, he'll be accepting you in the way you left, and so on. So today we are going to cover part 3, which is boon 2. This is a very interesting boon, and in this boon, remember, this young boy came to Lord Yama. He had a lot of questions. He was quite well knowledgeable with the scriptures, but he wanted to hear from Lord Yama on some key things that he was in his mind. So he read in the scriptures about the knowledge of Swargaloka and Brahmaloka. This is about heaven. All right. So in this context, he asked, can you tell me more about this world that people have been talking about, this heavenly world, right? So, and in this, Lord Yama then explains to him, very interesting, you asked this question, and he says, please enlighten me. And here, this is what Lord, he asked the dad, oh, dad, you know the fire sacrifice? This fire sacrifice, which is practiced by many, which is the way to heaven. Why this is the case? He says that, most mortal beings, crave for heaven. Because in the world that we live, we have a lot of sufferings and challenges, and we have this ideal world or heavenly world where we don't experience any suffering. Everything is good, right? So there's no hunger, there's no disease, there is no poverty, So he asked Lord Yama, is there such thing, such a world? If there is so, please explain it to me. He said, I have faith. He says, those who are in heaven enjoy immortality. This knowledge is the sacrifice, what they call the fire sacrifice. And this is what he wants to know. So remember, Yama has been a mortal himself, right? But Yama practiced fire sacrifice, and he became a god. And you see in many of the scriptures that they show that many of them have done this sacrifice and have, elevated themselves into the godly plane or the heavenly plane, right? So here Nachiketa asks, I want to know about this. So Lord Yama, that means, is qualified to teach Nachiketa because he used to be in the humanly plane and he, ascended to this heavenly, celestial level. So he says, okay, uh, I will teach you this. So it is said in the scriptures, most of the goddesses and gods were in the humanly plane and they transcended this through this various sacrifice. So this description of Swargaloga and Devaloga has been in the scriptures, right? So here he wants to know this secret of this heavenly plane where people don't have to suffer, there's no anger, there's no hatred, there is no disease, there's no poverty, and so on. He says it liberates people from everything. Now, this here is really important because you'll see that, he has heard about this in the scriptures, he listened and he wants to know. But I've seen my father, although he has read all the scripture, he still goes through suffering, he still has all the limitations, perhaps, and there are many people that go through this. And if I know this secret, maybe I can liberate them for them to ascend to that heavenly plane. So Lord Yama said, okay, great. Since this Nachiketa was very pure in his form, he said, okay, uh, I will teach you this. So here uh, he goes on to say in paragraph 14, oh Nachiketa, I know well the fire sacrifice that leads to heaven. Remember, Lord Yama also was in the humanly plane and he did certain sacrifice to move to this heavenly plane. So he said, I will give you to you in very detail. So he said, listen very carefully and try to understand it. So he says, please remember this fire is the means of attaining, here is the part that is so important, immortality, right? So and he'll explain this in detail. So this fire sacrifice can lead you to immortality. He says that it is also the support of the universe. That means he's talking about the creator of this universe. So he says that it lies hidden in the mind of the wise ones. Only the wise ones who have attained this will be able to give you this secret. Here it's really interesting because Nachiketa asked this heavenly plane where there is no sufferings, there's only a lot of good things that happen, and so on. Here Yama is telling, yes, the Devas and others live in this place, but he says, I'm going to teach you this fire that gets you to that heaven, but it also gives you that immortality. So which means that in this, Shankara says that actually this practice, even the heavenly, niceties are still a limited version of that ideal. So, but here Lord Yama is explaining to him, I will give you an understanding of that heavenly plane, but I'm also going to show you how to attain immortality. That means transcendental to even that plane. So he says it lies in the minds of the wise. This part is really important because only the ones that seek this knowledge earnestly, only the ones who acquire this wisdom will get to this plane, which is the higher abode that is even transcendental to that heavenly body, close to that immortality, but not there yet, right? But most people, they say, I want to go to Vaikunta and all those things where there's no suffering. But here, Lord Yama is telling, yes, there is that. But even that is limited. He gives some examples in this. He says that ultimately it is to help you to realize that immortality that is transcendental. So he says that many of those uh, humanly characters that became devas, maybe they will rule, they take on different roles like, looking after death, looking after fire, looking after all this. So there are different devas that are given names, that are given certain duties. They may live for millions, they may be existing for a very long time, but once their duty is finished, they have to go back. Similar to like the ministers, right? You get elected, then you serve for 5 years, and then after you finish, you go back. So he says that even that, he says very clearly that, is a limited perspective of the heaven. So, but I will show you, he says, but it's in the mind. So what this tells us is that to really acquire that heavenly, you need to have a quality of that mind. And to go to a higher plane, that requires a lot more intensity, right? So Lord Yama is now going to show him that, right? So here he says many of those devas also have ascended, but they are also in that limitedness and have not come to the level of that Brahman or the immortality state. So then he goes on to explain how to do this practice to attain that. So he says, then he speaks about this practice. He says, Yama told Nachiketa that fire was the first of the world. This is very important because he says that fire, that Brahman manifests in the form of the fire. So here, if you are a scientist, you'd say, okay, this fire is actually our primordial atom that led to the Big Bang and everything else in this universe, space, time, right? So it's described quite nicely also in that scriptures of what that it gives you different names for this. They use the word called Hiranyagarbha. You'll see, Hiranyagarbha is actually about the golden womb or the egg. For me, it's that universe, the beginning of the universe where everything comes. It's the source of creation. It's the first manifestation of the Brahman. Brahman is formless. It's the first manifestation of that Brahman in this universe, which is the space, time, all those things. It's the source of creation. So you'll see in the details, it says the first manifestation of Brahman. It is the universal consciousness that, or sometimes it's called the cosmic mind. So different terms are used, cosmic mind that is identified in our own scriptures, such as Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. So this is the manifestation of the creator, the creation process and the sustaining, and also the dissolution. So in this universe, we have these forces that are part of that Hiranyagarbha or the golden womb. There's also the description. So this is the manifestation of that Brahman in this universe. It's also called Ishvara. Ishvara is actually the Lord or the ruler. It's the manifestation of Brahman, all the forces that governs our universe. And then there's also Agni. Agni is actually the fire, which is actually the source of, our consciousness, also a manifestation of the Brahman. So here are some of the things that he talks about. Yes, when you practice this fire, I'll describe what that fire is. You also hear that this is the first part of Brahman to create this universe, right? And also another element is Vayu, which is air and wind. And, the other one is actually about the Virat. Virat is actually the sun, or, in sometimes they call Surya. So what he's describing here is that the first manifestation of the Brahman is all this element, the beginning of the universe, the womb of the universe, and everything in there. So it's a manifestation of the Brahman in the form of all this space, time, the elements which make up our body. So the element of the Brahman is part and parcel of our body, including our consciousness. He says that very clearly. For you to attain that immortality, you've got to understand the Brahman and trace it back to the Brahman through various practices, right? A noisy mind will not acquire this. It will be focused on the materiality. It will not, it will miss that, that subtle nature of that Brahman that gives you the transcendentality or that, immortality. So it describes this, how to perform this sacrifice to come back to the transcendental nature of oneself. So he describes, he says, he gives in detail how to prepare the sacrificial altar, how to build. So it's like a priest sitting down, putting the bricks, aligning it so that the fire is contained, and he also described, how the fire was to be lit. So how do you light the fire? What kind of materials go into the fire so that it becomes combustible, it doesn't crackle, it doesn't give smoke, it blazes amazingly. So that's how the sacrifice is done. It requires a fair bit of discipline to prepare yourself, prepare for that sacrifice. So what Lord Yama is actually explaining to Nachiketa is that how to prepare yourself, in the form of this altar, to light the fire of that Brahman that is manifesting in all of us. Only through the lighting that fire, that one, like how in the sacrifice, whatever things you put in, rice, husk, clothings, all the material things will all be burnt in cinder, that ultimately the only thing that is left, whatever you put in, will ultimately become that ash. In that same way, that fire that is lit, it burns all that sufferings and sugas and the dukkhas, ultimately leading to the state of samatva. So he's actually teaching Lord Yama is teaching Nachiketa how to practice this practice of fire, what Swamiji calls the Tava Kanal, how to practice this fire of the Brahman that is within us, which the noisy mind cannot touch. So he's slowly showing how to prepare the body, the mind, the intellect, to that one spot to be able to feel that vibration. So basically he's teaching Lord Yama the practice of meditation, right? So the self-realization process. So here he explains this in a little bit more detail. He tells him, listen very carefully. So he says the first embodiment of the existence is in this material world. And, it is referred to as the Hiranyagarbha. So the Hiranyagarbha is actually the cosmic womb or the golden womb, the source of creation. That is where the Big Bang is. That is where the fire, the crucible of the fire of the primordial is lit. And that manifests as our life force, right? Virat is actually the sun, right? That sun in us. So you see that the Big Bang leads to many other, fires or suns, atoms, and all those things. He says that is manifesting in all of us. It's embodied. So the Brahman, the first embodiment is that fire, right? And all the remaining, it also is called Ishvara, Prajapati, Agni, Vayu, Aditya, all those things. He says all these are a manifestation of this, from this cosmic womb. And so they manifest in different forms, but the source is one. So he says they all mark the beginning of the world. Each has different connotations. As I said earlier, Vayu is, wind. So sometimes wind is used in the meditational process, and so on. So he says the Agni is fire, not the fire we have. It's actually the source of everything. It's about that consciousness, including the fire that is in our body, including the fire everywhere, in every element. So sometimes this fire is referred to as the Kundalini fire or the Kriya force, right? So he's actually teaching him about how to become aware of this force, this fire in us, that will actually burn up all the desires and all the things in our material world that distracts us, and all our cravings to go to heaven and all these things. He says that if the mind is able to focus on this fire, then you would get to the source, and ultimately you would know what the reality is. So this practice is really important. Right? So here he says that the great soul Yama then tells, to Nachiketa, here is so, and Nachiketa actually practices this really, really well. He understood this very well because he was very innocent. There was no desire in him. So he started practicing this really well, and Lord Yama was very surprised that this boy got it. And it's not surprising because the people that are so caught up with this material world, find it very difficult. But this boy was so innocent, very pure in his thoughts, and he picked this up very, very quickly. And that's why he started asking deeper questions. So he was pretty much ready, but he needed the secret of getting there. Right? So Lord Yama was very happy. This boy got it immediately, whereas many people take so long to get it, sometimes never get it. So he says, it is amazing you got it. He says, here is another boon I want to give you. This sacrifice will henceforth be known by your name. Because it was so well done by him, he actually named this fire called the Nachiketa fire. You see? And he said this fire is a multi-shaped necklace. Right? Wonderfully, he says, this multi-shaped necklace. So for me, what that means is actually Nachiketa was teaching, when Lord Yama was teaching Nachiketa this inner fire that sometimes we call it the Kriya or the Kundalini, which is like a chain of fire. So Mahan calls it the interlinked chain of the eyes, inner eyes, or the state of, gives us that consciousness. So when I first read it, I didn't understand this, but as I went deeper into the practice of meditation, I realized that this is what Lord Yama was explaining to Nachiketa, that it is like a necklace that is, interconnected. Of course, there are different interpretation of this, here in this case, one meaning is necklace is actually about the it's called a multi-shape with special kind of necklace. It says that it has all the stones with different colors and shape, somewhat like our life, but different things. Because it may be different, but it's all linked to that one. So we have this one state of the Brahman, but gives us a multitude experiences and mindset. This is one interpretation. Another one is actually, it says about the path of doing work according to the sacrifice. That means we do our duty. We have multiple duties, but we do it with one mind, right? And if we did that, he says that we acquire the fruits of that Brahman, or the heavenly fruits of not being affected by the outcomes, and we get that liberation. So there are two different schools of thought, and Shankara, takes to the second one where, we have multiple experiences, but they all come from that one source that is within us. And if we did that, then the outcome, we don't look at the outcomes, whether sukha or dukkha, we're able to assimilate it, integrate it, and it becomes the source of our enlightenment. We attain that state of equanimity or samatva. So it's explaining in detail this meditational process to Nachiketa, and he got it, right? So then Lord Yama says, he who properly instructed by his mother, father, teacher, so he says that, yes, they have to be taught by a teacher about this inner journey of self-realization. So basically, he's talking about self-realization, right? He says, yes, everybody wants heaven, and they get some niceties from heaven, but even that will be short-lived. But here is it, I'm going to show you that which gives you immortality, transcendentality, right? And he says that it has to be instructed by, your parents who know about this, or a teacher or a guru who knows this really well, how to go to that inner journey, right? And perform thrice named after Nachiketa. What is the three things? that is really important. When we practice this, we perform this sacrifice. That means that we practice this meditational practice, that we sacrifice ourselves from meandering in this material world and experiencing all the desires to let's step away from there to experience that inner vibration. And this is what most people find very difficult, right? They say, I got no time, my work is very important, this, that, that. They give all the excuses that they want to sit down and quietly practice meditation and all these things. So he says that those who practice this sacrifice, not just sitting down and meditating, finding a quiet time for themselves, but also learning to have that mindset in everything that you do, right? Not be opulent in what you do, not be overly, you do your duties, but don't get caught up by it, right? The other second aspect is charity, giving charity. That means thinking of others, like what Nachiketa did in Boon 1, right? You acquire this liberation, you teach people how to be liberated. You acquire all the 10 capitals of life. You're able to share those 10 capitals of life, right? So it's having that altruistic mindset to be able to share this, right? And the third one he says is that but learning about the scriptures. And when you learn about the scriptures, not in a rote way, but just memorizing it, but really knowing the essence of it, that the dharmic knowledge of self-realization, the practices of that, and putting it to practice, he says it goes beyond birth and death. So even the celestial beings will have to come back, all that you transcend this. So he's explaining this wonderful teaching of the self-realization, that introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation, and service in this paragraph beautifully, right, to this young boy. So he goes on to say in 18 that he who knows, as stated earlier, the details of the fire, such as the kind of bricks to be used in the building, that means how to prepare the body, how to keep the body healthy, how to keep the mind healthy, how to keep the intellect sharp, how to keep it focused. This is the bricks that he's talking about, right? And then their numbers, how the fire is to be installed, how do we ignite the fire, right? How do we quieten the mind to experience that consciousness? Fire here is that inner consciousness or the cosmic consciousness, and practicing the sacrifice, that is, that meditation, and also the service and the acquisition of the dharmic knowledge. And he says that this meditating, that he is one with the Virat, one with that ultimate reality, the divinity, right? So, so it's not about searching for niceties. You meditate because you get better health, or meditate because you get better wealth, and all those things. It's actually you're performing this to be one with that true reality of the cosmic consciousness. He says, only through this that you throw off, you transcend death, you break the bonds of ignorance and the humanly weaknesses, including the search for heaven. He says that you go beyond the mental suffering. He enjoys heaven himself. In heaven, you see, it's not about searching for the niceties, but you become that. And it is perpetual and eternal. He says that he is one with the Virat. So one with that, supreme state of existence. And here it is that, he's showing how that practice leads to that inner light that is manifesting and reverberating in us, the Bhagavan's etham in us. So he's showing a practice for us to get that. So then the Nachiketa sacrifice, that sacrifice is now named after Nachiketa. So here it says that the Nachiketa sacrifice derives its importance from the fact that it leads to the realization of one's identity, Virat. Virat here is that supreme consciousness or the cosmic consciousness. Right? The sacrifice, it's by itself is not important. It is the meditation preceding this realization. So it's this practice is about this meditation that helps us to realize this, that We are a manifestation of that Brahman. And, and everything, the epicenter of the Brahman starts and ends with us. Right? And this practice is what Nachiketa asked for. So Yama then explains, oh, Nachiketa, it's your second boon. You asked for the knowledge about the Agni, right? So he says that, about the knowledge of Agni. I have just given you that boon, right? He says, I've given you that, and you've done a fantastic job, right? He says, people will call the Agni by your name. He says, so this, because you have a pure mind and you're searching for the truth and you got it, I am willing to give you the additional bonus boon by naming it after you. So whenever people think about Nachiketa fire, it means about this practice of self-realization. So here Agni sometimes is referred to as the Virat. Virat here is actually the cosmic consciousness that leads to the union, right? So a sacrifice that leads to the union, the practice that leads to the union. So again, he says that meditation alone is not the end. No, it should lead to that supreme consciousness. Most people think meditation is the ultimate. No, meditation should lead us to clarity of thought. The clarity of thought will lead us to the transcendentality nature of who we are, transcendental to that search for heaven, goodness, all those things, all that disappears, ultimately leads us to this cosmic consciousness that helps us to become liberated from birth and death, Suga cycles. So this is what that knowledge that this young boy was asking. So here, the key lessons in this boon too is that for us to really understand about that, understand about who we are, we have to preparing the mind for self-realization. So which is not searching for heaven, the Vaigunda, but actually that practice of self-realization that we become transcendental or attain that immortality. And that's what, and what does that mean? Being disciplined, which means that requires performing sacrifice, allocating time for meditation, charity, and also studying the scriptures on the dharmic knowledge that helps the mind be powerful, build the stamina, and attain that subtleness to be able to go inside and experience that cosmic intelligence and cosmic consciousness from the gross form to the most subtle form. And that is one way that one attains the transcendent. We become transcendental to Sugha and Dukkha. So you become transcendental. So remember, Nachiketa asked, teach me the knowledge that leads me to the heaven where there is no suffering and all these things. So Lord Yama then teaches him that is something far supreme to the heavenly that people have described, to that nature, the state of us that is, the true reality or the immortality, the transcendental nature of who we are. So he taught Nachiketa this, and now he's prepared. Okay, I got it. So then comes that I want to ask the third boon, right? So he's now prepared for the third boon. So why this is so important is that for us to really understand the supreme nature of the reality, there's a set of preparation that we need to do. Boon 1 teaches us that we have to have a mindset that is not selfish, a mindset that helps us to be selfless, thinking about others. So this is the first part. The second boon talks about that knowledge of self-realization. So from selfishness to selfless to the selfness, and ultimately this boon too will lead to the practice of self-realization. Now, when that happens, you see that the mind becomes more powerful and strong, and now it can probe deeper into what the true reality is. Now he's ready to say, okay, I'm ready to ask you the third boon. So Lord Yama said, now ask me about the third boon. So, and I'm going to stop here because the third boon is where a lot of the discussion is going to be. Sandosha.